Hi, Claudia here from Create with Claudia, and today I'm going to show you this fun block that I came up with. It's called Scrappy Swimming Fish. It's a lot of fun to make. It's a great scrap buster. It's a little bit of a different size than your normal block, which is a square. This is 4.5 inches by 9.5 inches. Let's get started. I actually made a quilt with this. I'm going to show you that first, just so you can see what it looks like in a bigger quilt. That's why I came up with this block, because I had some coral fabrics that I just fell in love with and wanted to do something with them, and they reminded me of salmon swimming. So let me show you that quilt first, and then we'll get started on the block. Well, first let me show you, this is my sketch that I did. I did do a couple alterations. I ended up making 7 columns and then 4 down. But this is, and my quilt is actually called Swimming Upstream. And this is it right here. And I really love the way it turned out. You can see it, all my fish. Every fish I did is actually using the same fabric. So this is like this orange fish. The only difference is the sashing in the background. I used all different beiges just to add a little bit of movement and sparkle to the quilt. And you can sort of see that if you look. Here's one of the blocks. And then she actually had this professionally long arm quilted by a friend of mine who does beautiful work. And if you can find her on YouTube, she does, like I said, just gorgeous work. Her name is Adria Good Long Arm Quilting Coach Chick, and that she has that YouTube channel. And what I asked her to do was make it look like waves. So she sort of used turquoise thread and did sort of wavy sewing through up and down the length of the quilt. And then really fun, I love she added some bubbles coming out of some of the fish mouths, and then some bubbles in the water as well. You can sort of see, here's some bubbles. I just think she did a great job, and it really adds to this quilt. And I'm going to get ready. Actually, after I finish this video, I'm going to finally hang it up. I was taking some pictures of it and getting it ready, and now I can usually use it myself, which I'm very excited about. If you're interested in this pattern, it's called Swimming Upstream, and it's on my website, www.createwithclaudia.com, and it's under my quilting pattern, link under my tab. Excuse me, couldn't think there for a second. So let's get started so you can see how to make this fun block. All right, so you're going to need the following. And I have my little list here so I don't tell you the wrong thing or forget to tell you something. You're going to need for the background, actually we'll do the fish first. For the fish body, you're going to need fabric. You're going to need the following cuts. You're going to need 3 squares cut 2¼ inch by 2¼ inch. These are going to be for the half square triangles, and you're going to need 3 of them. I'm only showing one here because for time's sake I actually went ahead and cut some of them and sewed them together. But you're going to need 3 squares cut 2¼ inch by 2¼ inch for the fish. That's going to be for the head and the tail. And then the body is the same fabric, or again you can use whatever fabric, you can mix them up if you want. But for this one, it's going to be a 2¼ inch by 2½ inch by 4½ inch rectangle. You're going to need one of these for each fish. You're going to need one 2½ by 4½ inch rectangle and 3 squares cut 2¼ inch by 2¼ inch. That's for the fish body. For the background, or the sashing, whatever you want to call it, and again, this is for the half square triangles, you're going to need 3 squares cut 2¼ inch by 2¼ inch, and that's of the background fabric. You're going to need 2 strips cut 1½ inch by 7½ inches, and they're like long rectangles. And then 2 strips, this is the last you're going to need, 2 strips cut 1½ inch by 4½ inch. And that's what you're going to need to make this block. For the block. All right, so the first thing you want to do is make your half square triangles. And I'm going to show you how to make one. And again, I've already made 2 others with fabric that I went ahead and sewed them earlier to save some time. You're going to take your 2 of the squares, one of the fish body and one of the background, and you're going to lay them right sides together and match up those corners All right, and you're going to take your ruler and you're going to draw a diagonal line on the back of one of them. I like to draw it on the lighter fabric just so I can see it and I don't have to draw such a dark line. Hopefully you can see it. I'm going to make it a little dark just for the camera's purposes. That's pretty dark. There's my line going straight down from one corner to the other, a diagonal line. And you're going to sew on each side of that line a scant 1/4 inch. And I should have started with that. You want to definitely use a scant 1/4 inch for this block. And because you're using really small pieces, you really want to watch your seam allowance and you want to watch how everything's cut. It is a little bit trickier to sew together in that respect, that you want to make sure your measurements are all correct and your sewing is all correct. So let me get started. I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch down there and a 1/4 inch on that side, and I'll come back in a second. Okay, so you can see where I've sewn down beside the line my scant 1/4 inch. I'm going to trim off those excess threads. There's some on the squares too. And then you're going to take your rotary cutter and your ruler and you're going to split this in half right down that drawn line. So you're going to take that line, use that line that you drew a few minutes ago, and just cut down, watch your fingers. And there you have your half square triangles. I'm going to press those open. Okay, so these are the half square triangles. They're going to need to be trimmed down to 1.5 inch square, and I'll do that in a second, but I want to give you a little bit of a pressing tip. Normally, people tell you to press to the darker fabric, and I normally do that too, but in this case, you're going to press one of the half square triangles to the darker fabric and one towards the lighter fabric. And the reason for that is you're going to want to nest them together so you get some nice sharp points, and I'll show you that in a second. But the first thing you're going to do is want to cut these down to 1.25 inches. I'm sorry, I'm making all kinds of mistakes today. You're going to want to cut them down to 1.5 inch square. So 1.5 by 1.5. Now I give very generous fabric requirements for half square triangles. It's just what I like to do in case I make a mistake. If you have a better method, go right ahead, or a different method, whatever you're comfortable with. And I know I have a little bit of excess fabric, and I'm more comfortable sewing that way. And just make sure that's 1.5 by 1.5. Okay, so there's one. Okay, so there are my 1.5 inch square, half square triangles. And what you're going to do, and I've already done two of them already, just to save some time. You can see here, I'm going to sew these together to form the tail and the head. And that is where the pressing comes in handy, because you're going to sew down this center line. And this way, you can actually, because I pressed one to the pink and one to the beige, you can nest those seams together so they should sew really nicely and give you a nice sharp point. If you had them both pressed to the one side, you get a lot of bulk there and it might slip and you might not get that nice sharp point. I don't use pins here. You can use pins. It's up to you. I know different people use different things, but I do not use pins. That's why I like the nesting. It just sort of fits right in there. So I'm going to go ahead and sew my 1/4 inch seam allowance right down this side to get that half square, or that flying goose unit. Flying geese. It looks like flying geese. It's not really a flying geese, but. All right, there it is, and I got a nice sharp point. I'm happy with that. Now, one thing I will do before I keep going, again, because these are smaller blocks, I like to measure just to make sure my units are measuring what I want them to measure. Sometimes they need to be trimmed a little bit. These need to be 2.5 inches by 1.5 inches, just as a little guideline. And this is just a wee bit off. So I'm just going to clean that up a little bit. It helps down the line. I mean, barely anything, but just enough that it sort of cleans it up a little bit. And I did that already with these two. All right, now we're ready to assemble the rest of the block. The first thing you're going to do is lay out, here's your fish body, this is going to be your top, doesn't matter which one you choose, and then this is the tail. Now the tail is going to be almost like an hourglass. You're going to put it's going to end up looking like that. So right now I'm going to sew these two pieces together to make my hourglass. And this unit will give you a little bit of bulk, so watch when you're sewing, and you're going to have to use a little bit of care there. And what I do is I'll line it up, and I usually fold this back to see if my points look like they're going to be good. And sometimes I'll use a pin right in there, sometimes I won't. We're going to wing it today and hope that the point matches. We'll give it a shot, but you can use a pin, but I think that should be okay. Let me just eyeball. Okay, here we go. And again, using that scant 1/4 inch, you're going to sew along here. Okay, fingers crossed my points are good. And they're pretty good. Yeah, I'll take that. Phew, I was a little worried there. Okay, so what I will do is I'm going to press this open. All right, and there is my tail. So now you're going to sew the head to the body and then the tail to the body. So I'm going to go ahead and do that next. You're going to sew this to that and that to that. All right, so we're almost done now. Now all we need to do is add the background, and hopefully this measures up correctly. Fingers crossed again. I always, hold my breath when I'm measuring things. Again, I say again a lot. Sorry about that. I've noticed that in my other videos. I don't know why I say that, but this looks like it's just about it should be by this point 7.5 inches long. So now you're going to take those longer strips and add them down each side. Like so. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be back in a second. Oh, one tip here. I sew down this side so I can see where those points are, so I can get nice crisp points when I'm adding these sashes. All right, there's one side added. Now we're going to do the others, and you can see I have nice sharp points there. I'm happy with those. All right, we're almost done. There's my fish. And I'm just going to add these last two strips here and here. Oops. And that should be it. All right, and there is my fish block. A little tweaky here. I'm gonna have to see what I did there. I might have to fix that a little bit, but the next thing I would do is basically square it off, so it would be 9.5 inches by 4.5 inches, but there's your fish block. Here's the other one. I just think they're so much fun to do, and I can just imagine these in all sorts of colors. And again, here's the quilt I made with it. I hope you give it a try. And thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.